trace minerals are the microminerals. Those are the minerals that are needed in minuscule or small amounts in order to protect against deficiency and disease. But keep in mind, they are still vital to our health. In terms of trace minerals, two of the most important trace minerals that we think of are iron and iodine, as well as zinc, selenium, copper, fluoride, chromium, magnesium, and molybdenum. So let's take a minute and just go over some general properties of the trace minerals. Let's start with iron. Iron is important because iron is deficient around the world. Absorption of iron is important. We need to make sure that we're not only taking in adequate amounts of iron, but that we're also absorbing that iron. And the absorption can be based on the type of iron that we're taking in, the individual's need, and the individual's diet. So the type of iron, is it a heme iron or a non-heme iron? Heme iron means that it comes from animal flesh, from muscle cells, in the form of hemoglobin or myoglobin, and it's easily absorbed. The non-heme iron comes from plant sources. This is an elemental iron. It's found in grain products, vegetables, milk, and eggs. Unlike heme iron, the non-heme iron, or the plant form, is not easily absorbed by the body. So the type of iron is important. The iron status of the person is important. What are their needs? That's a second major factor that influences the absorption. Somebody who is iron deficient is going to absorb that iron more readily. Or if they're in a state of pregnancy or growth, they're going to absorb that more readily. And then finally, the type of diet that the individual has. The diet can actually have a negative impact on the iron absorption. High fiber intake, somebody who is experiencing pica, which means that they are craving either non-food items or food items in very large amounts, such as ice. This is an example of a pica. They might want to eat dirt, hair, chalk, and there's a nutrient deficiency, but because of that, that interferes with the iron absorption. And somebody who is on a zinc supplement also needs to be careful because that interferes with the iron absorption. For an individual who is low in iron, they could develop a deficiency symptom known as anemia. And again, the iron is needed to make the red blood cells, the hemoglobin part of the red blood cells, to transport the oxygen. And so if you're not able to make those red blood cells, eventually anemia develops. So we need to make sure that we're taking in adequate amounts of iron. And this might be actually an area that you need a supplement. And so whenever you're working with individuals, you would have them talk to their doctor to see if they actually need a supplement or not. Other trace minerals, zinc. Zinc, 90% is found in muscle and in bones in our body. Basically, we can find it in whole grains, peanuts, legumes, and fortified breakfast cereals. Those are all excellent sources of zinc. And like iron, absorption can be inhibited by plant fibers, by calcium, by copper, and iron supplementation. So we need to be careful, again, combining any type of supplements between the iron and the zinc. Now, if you're not taking in adequate amounts of zinc, we do see deficiency that can occur. And deficiency symptoms could include acne like rash, diarrhea, hair loss, which a lot of times you'll have patients who have a chronic illness that complain about hair loss. That's the first thing you want to look at. Do they have a zinc deficiency? You're also going to have people complain of hypogeusia, which is a reduced sense of taste, and also hyposmia, which is a reduced sense of smell. So those are two keys that there might be a zinc deficiency. Selenium is important as an antioxidant, also important for thyroid hormone metabolism. And iodide is important for growth, development, and metabolism for thyroid synthesis. And during World War I, they found that there was a direct link between the lack of iodide and goiter. Goiter is an enlargement of the thyroid gland, which your thyroid is in here. And so if you're not taking in adequate iodide, you're going to start to see that thyroid gland start to swell. And they noticed that during World War I, certain regions of the country had an increased incidence of the goiter. So they did soil samples, and they found that there were low amounts of iodide in the soil. And so people were not getting adequate amounts of iodide in their diet. And at that point in time, then, they decided to make mandatory fortification, and that's why we have salt that has iodide added to it. Copper is important for metabolism of iron and as a cofactor for antioxidants, as well as connective tissue, proteins, blood clotting, and immune function. Fluoride is important for our bones and our teeth. It inhibits the bacterial activity in the mouth, helps to prevent tooth decay. It also helps to strengthen the structure of our bones and our teeth, and it's important in the synthesis of tooth enamel. In the 1940s, they discovered that there was a relationship between low levels of fluoride in the water supply and the development of dental caries. And so they started to supplement the toothpaste with fluoride. Now, we often tell parents of young children, limit the amount of toothpaste that you use and don't allow them to eat the toothpaste. And the reason for that is something called mottling. And what the mottling is, if somebody takes in high amounts of fluoride, it causes white or yellow spots on the teeth during the tooth development. And so that's why we encourage parents not to allow children to eat or swallow the toothpaste. And then chromium. Chromium is important for glucose control. It enhances the transport of glucose across the cells by aiding insulin function. And so we are looking at chromium as a possible agent to be used in type 2 diabetes, to be used perhaps as a supplement to help control blood sugar levels. So this concludes Module 4, and we finished talking about the 6 different nutrients and their functions and sources. And we will be moving on in the next unit to see how we can actually take this information and use it in our everyday lives.